It's so good to be with all of you today. Happy for this opportunity we have to worship together. I'm so thankful that those of you that are visiting have come to be with us today. You're a big encouragement to us. I might mention that Melissa's not feeling well today. That's the reason that she's not here. She was starting to go downhill on Wednesday and had a bad stomach bug. And so keep her in your prayers. I need all the help and support I can get. I'm going down to preach tonight in Lawton, so pray for me. And I'm hoping I go home and find her much better and she can go with me, but it's looking doubtful. In the lesson of the hour, I'd like to talk about, in a positive way, the subject of soberness. And I tell you what brought this to my mind is what's in the news, and that is that we're having a vote on Tuesday about whether to legalize marijuana for just recreation. And I think that's a horrible thing. I think it's something, if you have opportunity and you believe in using your sovereignty to vote, that you'll vote against that. That, over the years, when I was growing up, there's so many different forms of intoxication and things that people get addicted to, whether it's liquor by the drink and all of the alcohol and stuff we have in all of our grocery stores and all the different kind of drugs that have been introduced over the years, that I've seen the damage that it has done in among people in my family and friends and different ones, that it's just wrecked their lives. And one thing we don't need is another way for people to lose their soberness and clear thinking. And so that's what motivated me to think about this subject. Now, I know we've had lessons on, in studying the works of the flesh, about drunkenness and not too long ago. So just looking at it from that point of view is not my purpose. But soberness is the positive way in which we are to live, where we're clear thinking, we're not intoxicated in any way. The Christian is to be somebody that is clear thinking at all times about their life. We know that we are to serve God and be pleasing in His sight. We were created to glorify God. We know there's a judgment day that is coming, and we need to be getting prepared for that. We know there are many pitfalls all around us that would want to pull us away from the narrow way of Christ that we should be walking. And so we have to be clear thinking at all times in the decisions that we make. We don't need to be taking any substance that's going to rob us of our ability to think straight and to make the proper choices in life to escape danger. And we want to be sober-minded so that we can do the things that God approves of. And if it's not alcohol or marijuana or some other substance that's the problem that is intoxicating somebody, maybe it's the habits that you've formed, and maybe it's hobbies that you follow, maybe it's some different obsession that you have that keeps you from thinking straight about your duties and responsibilities to God and your family and to your fellow man. Whatever it might be, you need to get rid of that and think straight about your duties. We all have important work to do in life, and so we want to be those that are temperate, that we take heed at all times to ourselves and to our safety, that we have self-control, that we're circumspect, we're cautious about the way that we live. Physically and spiritually, we have a responsibility to do that. So that is what we see in this word sober. Let's look at the definition in English. We have the word sober used in a number of verses we're going to look at. It's not affected by alcohol as its basic meaning. So certainly, whether it's being intoxicated by drugs or by alcohol or different pills that somebody might take, whatever that is that robs you of clear thinking, is opposed by God and opposed for God's purpose. Not drunk, free from alcoholism, not habitually drinking alcohol. And then it has this secondary figurative sense that we use all the time and that the Bible uses as well, is that you're serious in the way that you think about life. You're sober. You're sensible, you're solemn, and that certainly should describe a Christian and how we behave ourselves. A sober view of life, characterized by reason, sanity, self-control, showing mental and emotional balance. When you look at the thesaurus, at synonyms, when I start off, I think, well, I want to preach on soberness. The Bible talks about soberness in the New Testament a lot. So, well, what does soberness mean? And what are other verses that are really dealing with that same subject, other words that are used as synonyms for sober? And you get some more verses to learn some more about why we need to be sober. Well, here's some of those words. It's not drunk, not intoxicated, clear-headed, abstinent, temperate, moderate. And notice a lot of these words we've emphasized at other times about self-control and about being reasonable and in your religion and making sure you're using your mind to decide what you do and worship and work for the church. The word sober in the Greek there, nepho is the word that is translated sober. It means, again, not intoxicated, to abstain from wine. And figuratively, it's to be calm and collected in spirit, temperate, dispassionate. You're not ruled and affected by your emotions to where you can't think straight. So that's part of being sober, not being carried away by emotionalism. Vigilant, watchful, circumspect. And all of those are qualities that we need if we want to get through this world with the fewest bumps and bruises and scratches and problems. You need to be clear thinking, circumspect, watching for danger, looking for how things could go wrong and make sure you avoid them. That's part of being prudent and wise. So the need for soberness. We know in the military, in the World War, they talked about, whether World War I or II, about how you have to be sober and awake and alert and watching for all of the submarines and the dangers that are out there on a convoy. If you're crossing the street, we know the wise thing and the proper thing is to be clear thinking, not just go walking out in the road without looking every direction so that you don't get smashed, right? And the same way is with all of life, with anything that we're doing. We need to be clear thinking. We don't want to violate any of God's laws. God has physical laws and He has spiritual laws. And there's big consequences to violating any of those. Gravity makes you pay a big price if you step off the side of a house or a building, or you don't pay attention on the cliffside or whatever. It'll kill you. It has a serious consequence if you're not cautious and careful and sober when you're around anything that is dangerous as far as the laws of nature. We had the tornado heading towards the Yukon a week ago or so. Was that when it was? And we were all getting down in the cellar. And Chris is sort of the last one to want to get in. So he went to look out the front door, and a transformer he could see blowing up back behind his house. So he decided, well, that was a pretty good idea to get in the cellar. You don't want to stay out there with that. You got to have some soberness and take care of your health. And to glorify God, we've got to be sober, because God is a holy God, and He wants to be treated in the right way with reverence and respect and obedience. And if we violate His laws, we'll be separated from Him. We won't be able to go to heaven. We've got to be clear thinking in dealing with the things of God. And the Bible from beginning to end emphasizes that. And we need to be clear thinking to take care of our family so that we don't find ourselves in need, and that we're able to help other people on the right way. We have to be cautious about the way we behave around other people. Be sober-minded. So it's the opposite of being intoxicated or confused or self-indulgent or careless. That's what we're talking about, that the Bible emphasizes, to be sober. This command is repeated a number of times in the Scriptures. We need to have both physical sobriety in not being affected by intoxicants of whatever kind they might be. And we're told if somebody's going to be appointed to oversee the church as an elder, it says an overseer then must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, temperate. Well, that's you see that root word is the same as the word sober. It begins with the same letters there in the Greek definition: sober, abstaining from wine, exercising moderation and self-restraint in indulging the appetites, not self-indulgent or circumspect. You've got a guy that is serious. He doesn't let his different appetites be in control. He's a moderate person that has balance in his life. That's the kind of person to put in as an excellent Christian to be an elder. And that's the kind of person all of us ought to be as Christians, as we are temperate in our behavior. We're sober. We're not carried away in different ways from clear thinking. In 1 Timothy 3:11, women must likewise be dignified, not malicious gossips, but temperate, faithful in all things. So every woman that is a wife of an elder or a deacon or any other Christian, we should be temperate. We should be sober. We should not be under the control of any substance in our and confused in our thinking. But we're serious-minded people that take care of our business in the right way and are not controlled by other things. We can see in Romans 13 and verse 13, let us behave properly as in the day, not in carousing and drunkenness, not in sexual promiscuity and sensuality, not in strife and jealousy. So it is absolutely the opposite of what a Christian should be, to be involved in carousing and drunkenness. That's not on our list of things for a Christian to be involved in whatsoever. In Galatians 5:21, listing the fruit of the Spirit, or the works of the flesh that will keep us out of heaven. Envying, drunkenness, carousing, things like these, of which I forewarn you, just as I have forewarned you, that those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. So we got to overcome that and put it behind us, anything that's going to destroy our clear thinking. In 1 Peter 4 and verse 3, Peter the apostle says, for the time already past is sufficient for you to have carried out the desire of the Gentiles, having pursued a course of sensuality, lust, drunkenness, carousing, drinking parties, and abominable idolatries. Just like you have all the party animals around today, that every weekend it's all about drinking and doing drugs and losing your mind in one way or another. They had it in those days as well. But when you become a Christian, he said, you've already had enough time with that. You put that away. And now you live a sensible, sober way. We don't allow this physical drunkenness to take place in our life anymore. And there is a reason for all of the commandments that God gives us. It's dangerous in this world not to be thinking straight. And if you take marijuana or alcohol or any other kind of drug that fogs your brain, you put yourself in danger of being seriously hurt or even killed, or to kill somebody else. We see it every day in the news that some drunk driver is slammed into some people or whatever. It affects everybody. So we know why God forbids these things. To be intoxicated is to be in effect temporarily with diminished control over the physical and mental powers by means of alcoholic liquor, a drug, or other substance. That's what Random House College Dictionary says. It distorts your judgment. It reduces your ability to learn and to work. We're told in the book of Proverbs about how confused drinking makes you. And we've studied those verses before. It decreases the very first drink, your driving skills. It makes you careless at work. That's the reason they don't want you in any kind of drug or drink when you're operating heavy equipment or driving a car or doing anything that's going to endanger other people or yourself. It gives you a lack of alertness to defend yourself. And all of these physical things that we're talking about here are just examples of what is also true spiritually speaking. So we're going to look at those, all of these spiritual things that we got to be on lookout for. So a lack of self-control and willpower. Well, we're supposed to have self-control and willpower. Those are fruits of the Spirit. We know what we're doing all the time. And we're prone to all kinds of dangerous behavior otherwise. Of course, these substances are addictive. People get addicted to these pills or drink or whatever it is that stimulates pleasure points in your brain or whatever. People think, well, I got to have more of that until you can't feel normal without it. And it's something that leads to despair and hopelessness and guilt and sorrow. And the Bible describes that in Proverbs 23 about how it wrecks your life. So certainly the Lord is looking out for our good when He says, don't get intoxicated. When we would want to put a law into effect, or we want to keep a law that keeps people from having other ways to ruin their life, we're acting out of love for our fellow man. We know that following intoxication, there's all kinds of crime that follows. People aren't able to support themselves as they should or to get their drugs that they want, so they steal. They commit violence against other people. There's people break into other people's homes and so on. We know how much evil comes from these things. There's harm to your body. Our body has been given to us by God, and we are to be good stewards of all the gifts God gives us. We're to glorify God with our body. But when you take these intoxicants, whether it's marijuana or it's alcohol or whatever it might be, study after study comes out from medical authorities. You can go to the CDC, and I just started listing off the things for alcohol, and they're also true for marijuana, that it damages your brain. The developing brain of a young person using marijuana, it messes up their brain. How many of the different school shooters and things like that do we hear about that they were dope smokers before they flipped out and did some of the things that they did? It affects your thinking. It affects your brain. They are always a risk factor in different kinds of cancer that people get. There are a risk of stroke and high blood pressure and heart problems connected with these things. So it's a poison, and a little bit of poison isn't good. You want no poison, right? And that's the way the Bible describes alcohol. It's a poison. There was a study that was in the news just this last week, said even one drink is not good for you. You know, all my life they've been trying to come out with studies. Oh, it's okay to have it moderately. But more and more they study it, and just one is not good for you. A little bit of poison isn't good. And a lot of poison sure isn't good. And the Bible describes it in Habakkuk as being poison. Don't give poison to your neighbor. It's a stumbling block. Well, enough of physical sobriety. Spiritual sobriety. Listen to what the Scriptures tell us about dealing with God. We're to love God with all our heart. We're to worship God. We're to bring glory to God. We're certainly not to offend God in any way. It's what the Bible teaches us. So you better be sober when you're dealing with God and you're dealing with the things of God, when you're doing the work of the church, when you're carrying out your own personal ministry in the body of Christ. To honor Jesus, you need to be clear thinking that you're doing the right thing. Become sober-minded as you ought and stop sinning. For some have no knowledge of God. I speak this to your shame. So that's pretty strong. Well, that's the Apostle Paul writing to a church just like this church and telling us, hey, people, be sober. You know, this is a duty. Don't be sinning. Think straight. And don't offend God. We know what happens when you come before God and you don't do things the way He wants. We're told in Leviticus 10 and verse 3 about Nadab and Abihu. They brought in before God some incense, a fire, for their incense that was not commanded by God. They just offered this worship up presumptuously on their own, and they didn't follow what God had instructed them to do. So what does God think when you don't worship Him the way He commands to be worshiped? He sent fire out and killed them right there while they were worshiping, and struck them dead to set an example for Israel and for all time, that when you come before God, you better treat Him right, with reverence and respect, and do it the way He wants it done. That's the reason we're afraid to add to or take away from what the Bible says about worship. We want to do it the way God wants it to be done. Let's see in Leviticus 10:3. Then Moses said to Aaron, it is what the Lord spoke, saying, by those who come near me, I will be treated holy. And before all the people, I will be honored. So Aaron therefore kept silent. These were Aaron's sons that were the priests. His sons got struck dead right there in the worship. And he said, Aaron said, this is what God said. You've got to treat him holy if you're going to be a priest. Evidently, there might have been some alcohol involved in this thing, because listen to what it says in verses 8 through 11. The Lord then spoke to Aaron, saying, do not drink wine or strong drink, neither you nor your sons with you, when you come into the tent of meeting, so that you will not die. It is a perpetual statute throughout your generations, and so as to make a distinction between the holy and the profane, and between the unclean and the clean, and so as to teach the sons of Israel all the statutes which the Lord has spoken to them through Moses. So you need to be careful not to be intoxicated, because your job as a priest is to make sure you know what holy things are and unholy things are, the things that are right and the things that are wrong. You have that duty. So you better be clear thinking. Don't drink. Alcoholic drinks? Well, we're all priests as Christians. We better be clear thinking all the time. Be sober. Be sober so you're not going to violate any of God's laws, and you can set the right example for others. In 1 Thessalonians 5 and verses 6 through 8, it describes our life. We know the Lord's coming back. We know there's a judgment day coming. And the people of the world are living in the dark. They don't know about that day. They don't pay attention to it. They're drunk. But we're not to be drunk. We know the day is coming. So we live our life soberly as in the day. People that have knowledge, we're not ignorant in the dark. So it says, but you, brethren, are not in darkness, that the day should overtake you like a thief. For you are all sons of light and sons of day. We are not of the night nor of the darkness. So then let us not sleep as others do, but let us be alert and sober. For those who sleep do their sleeping at night, and those who get drunk at night. But since we are of the day, let us be sober, having put on the breastplate of faith and love, and as a helmet, the hope of salvation. We're not living in the dark anymore. We're not like those of the world that sleep spiritually and aren't aware of their duties and dangers. We ought to be people that are of the light. We're sons of light and day. We aren't spiritually asleep. We're alert. We're like the Roman sentry that is standing out guarding and making sure that nobody attacks the fort or is able to overcome the camp in any way. That's our duty, all of us. And woe unto us if we go to sleep on watch, right? We've got to be alert for the Lord's coming and for all the different dangers that might threaten ourselves and others. So you have to be awake. We're told in 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 5, we need to be sober as Christians in doing our duty, whether as a preacher or a Bible class teacher or whatever responsibility we're carrying out as a Christian. We need to be sober. He says, but you be sober in all things, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, fulfill your ministry. In looking at what different scholars say about be sober in all things and the meaning of the word sober, they say free from anxiety or befuddlement. Again, that's mental confusion. There's all kinds of false doctrines and false ideas that are going to come along and myths that people are going to teach. And you've got to be clear thinking as a preacher. You can't get carried away by whatever the trend or the craze is that's coming along, or with fear about your job or whatever. You've got to be clear thinking and preach the truth to people. So every faculty needs to be under full control to look at all facts and circumstances deliberately in the face. Appetite and nerves under control is what Timothy needed if he was going to do the work of an evangelist. Not to be a victim of whatever thing is, throwing people's minds into confusion religiously. There's always something new. There's either some kind of emotional thing like we've got going on now we hear about in the news, or some new innovation people are wanting to introduce. We got to be sane and balanced. In 1 Peter chapter 1 and verse 13, therefore prepare your minds for action. Keep sober in spirit. Fix your hope completely on the grace that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. What's the context of 1 Peter? It's written at the time of persecution. They're going through fiery trials. The brethren at Rome and in the Roman Empire at that time. And Peter writes to them and say, look, the Lord is coming back. We know about this salvation that's laid up for us. And we've got to gird up our minds. Gird up the loins of your mind, some translations say there. Prepare your mind. When they got ready to do some work, they had these long flowing robes. They'd get their end of their robe and pull it between their legs and stuff it in their belt so their legs were free to go to work, go to fight, do whatever you had to do. It says you got to get your mind right, because you're going to face persecution. You're going to have trials and hardships. And you make up your mind, your heart is fixed on heaven and the hope that you have laid up there. and all the rewards you're going to get when Christ comes back. And you get ready to do your job. Have a sober attitude about what you've got to do. In Colossians 4 and verse 17, say to Archippus, says, take heed to your ministry. Focus your mind on what you've got to do, which you receive from the Lord, that you may fulfill it. We've got serious business to do as preachers and members, all of us, as Christians. We have a ministry to carry out, and we're to fulfill that ministry. What does it mean to fulfill? You fill it all the way up. You complete it. You make your service for the Lord and for others all that it should be. 100%. That's what you're shooting for. Perfection. Let's fulfill. Well, you got to be clear thinking if you're going to be all you can be. So be sober, physically and spiritually. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 8 and 9, we need to be sober about the devil. We have a spiritual enemy that we don't want to be ignorant of. He lives. He prowls about. He's looking for opportunities to take those that are saved and bring them back into his dominion of sin and death. He wants you. He wants me. And if you're not sober-minded, he'll get you because he's powerful enough to do it. You got to be on guard. So Peter tells them, be of sober spirit. Be on the alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. But resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same experience of suffering are being accomplished by your brethren who are in the world. Here they are, government's arresting people, putting them to death if they don't deny Christ and so on. That was going on when this book was written. It says you got to get your mind alert and ready for all of the things the devil's trying to do. Be on guard. And when the devil comes for you, you stand up to him. You resist him and he'll cower away. He's not going to stay away. He'll come back looking for another chance. But you've got to be ready to trust in the Lord's teaching and his word and his care. And don't give in to the devil and compromise. We've got a war against our own flesh that we've got to be sober about. You know, you got an enemy you wake up with every day and you live every day with is your fleshly, earthly desires that are trying to trip you up as you live your life from day to day. Beloved, I urge you as aliens and strangers to abstain from fleshly lust, which wage war against the soul. We have desires that want us to satisfy them in the easy way that's often unlawful. That's what makes them lust. Don't give in to them. Pray about it. Keep your mind alert because it's always there trying to bring you down. And you have to keep your mind focused on what your life is all about. In 1 Corinthians 6 and verses 12 and 13, Paul said, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are profitable. Paul looked at his life. There's a whole lot of things out there we can choose in the realm of liberty and freedom that we can be involved with. What we're going to eat, what we're going to drink. There's all these things in the world that God has given us, and they have some good uses and some of them not so good, not so profitable. You have to decide what you're going to do. Paul says, anything I do is going to be lawful, but just because it's lawful doesn't mean it's profitable for me to do it, to other people or to myself. So you have to be careful about the blessings, even the good things that are in the world. If you overuse them, they can hurt you. They can take control of you. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. Do you see? You don't want to be addicted to anything. You don't want to be addicted to tobacco. You don't want to be addicted to alcohol or marijuana or anything. Paul said there's a lot of things in this world that God has left us with choices about how to use it. But I'm not going to let anything take control of my mind, right? That you have to be made up that you're going to be in control. And if there's something that's giving you a problem, you need to get that out of your life. They were arguing food is for the stomach and the stomach is for food. Well, we got these desires. You got to satisfy them. But Paul says, but God will do away with both of them. Yet the body is not for immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord is for the body. We're told we need to be on the alert and sober that other people in the church don't get out of line. I mean, that's just the way it is. How many times had somebody sprung up in the Old Testament? They're going along, Israel's doing well under Joshua conquering the land, and then Achan comes along and brings a curse on the people because he's stealing and taking things under the ban. That's a real root of bitterness, isn't it, that sprung up. Sometimes there's people that rise up and say, oh, let's worship idols. And it ends up ruining the efforts of all the people because they have idolaters among them. Well, the same thing happens in the church. So you got to be clear thinking about what are other people doing. That if you start hearing people that are denying the faith and the practice that the Lord tells us we're to follow, we need to take notice of that and mark that person. It says, see to it that no one comes short of the grace of God, that no root of bitterness spring up causing trouble, and by it many be defiled, that there be no immoral or godless person like Esau, who sold his own birthright for a single meal. For you know that even afterward, when he desired to inherit the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no place for repentance, though he sought for it with tears. People can ruin their life and have a bad influence on others. You got to, not just the elders looking out. This is the same word for elders overseeing the church, but it's applied to all of us. We all have to look out for roots of bitterness. You got to be sober to do that, don't you? And you have to take heed to yourself. You think you're the one that stands. Take heed. Be sober, lest you be the one that falls. We got to be alert to false teachers that will arise in the church, because they're always going to come. You go along for a little while and no problems, and then boom, you got a problem. There's somebody teaching things contrary to Scripture. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but wanting to have their ears tickled, they will accumulate for themselves teachers in accordance with their own desires, and will turn away their ears from the truth and turn aside to myths. But you, Timothy, and we put ourselves in that place, don't we, when we read the book? We'll try to apply it. Be sober in all things, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, fulfill your ministry. People are going to get swept up with something to please them in teaching other than what the Bible teaches. They're going to want some new stories to tell that aren't what the Bible teaches, not the old story anymore. It says, you stay sober. You don't go along with that, right? You be willing to suffer if you have to teach the truth. And you do your ministry. 1 Corinthians 15:33 and 34. What was the trouble at Corinth? Some were teaching through Greek philosophy's influence, there is no physical resurrection from the dead. You're not going to be raised from the dead. That's all figurative or something, right? And Paul said, do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good morals. Become sober-minded as you ought, and stop sinning, for some have no knowledge of God. I speak this to your shame. They'd been taught the truth about the resurrection day. And you need to stick with that. And don't let people deceive you and tolerate false teachers. In 2 Timothy 2:26, and we're to teach people so that they may come to their senses. Come to their senses literally is return to soberness. If people are caught up in error, we want to try to help them come back to clear thinking, which is following the doctrine of Christ, and escape from the snare of the devil, having been held captive to do his will. And finally, look at this word sober in connection with the second coming of Christ. Some of the verses we've looked at have already kind of been in this territory as well. But the end of all physical things is coming. This whole world is going to be wiped out and burned up with fire. All the elements will melt with intense heat. All of the works of men are going to be gone. Now that day is surely coming, just as surely as the flood came. And you need to be sober and get ready for that day. The end of all things is near, therefore be of sound judgment and sober spirit for the purpose of prayer. You better keep your mind clear, and you better pray that you stay faithful and you do the things you're supposed to do. Right? We need clear thinking and alertness. Listen to Jesus in Luke chapter 21:34. Be on guard so that your heart will not be weighed down with dissipation. These are things that make you drunk, right? These are things that take away your clear thinking. Being involved in the dissipation, this riotous living of the world, it's just wasting yourself. And drunkenness and the worries of life. Say, well, my problem is not alcohol or marijuana, but do you have worries over physical things all the time that you don't think about God's commandments and the things He wants you to be doing? and that the day will come on you suddenly like a trap. For it will come upon all those who dwell on the face of all the earth. But keep on the alert at all times, praying, that you may have strength to escape all these things that are about to take place, and to stand before the Son of Man. So we need to be alert. Therefore be on the alert, in Mark 13:35, for you do not know when the master of the house is coming, whether in the evening, or at midnight, or when the rooster crows, or in the morning. It's going to happen someday, and you don't know what day that's going to be. If you think, oh, I still think the second coming's way off. Well, we don't know that. It could be this afternoon. But you're going to go meet God at an unknown time as well. You don't know the hour when you're going to die, do you? Or somebody's going to run you over in a car or whatever. You have to be ready all the time, sober and alert. In 1 Peter 1 and verse 13, therefore prepare your minds for action. Keep sober in spirit. Fix your hope completely on the grace to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Well, brethren, I hope this will be a stimulation for you to love and good deeds that we'll want to put on soberness and go out and live this week clear thinking, and that we'll do what's best for ourselves and our fellow man. This time we want to extend the Lord's invitation to those that are present this morning. Jesus Christ has come and died for us and been raised from the dead. We know He's the acceptable sacrifice that can cleanse us of our sins. And if we want to come in contact with that blood, we need to believe in Him as Lord. Believe that God raised Him from the dead, that He's the Savior. Putting your trust in Him, we need to repent of our sins, is what we're told in the book of Acts that they did. You have to renounce sin in your life and determine to walk in the way God tells you to walk. You need to confess Christ. You've got to let that faith be known so that then you can arise and be baptized in Jesus' name for the forgiveness of your sins. And you can start a new life. And hopefully you'll live that life faithfully and sober. As a child of God, you've not been serving the Lord like you should. You've let your mind get carried away by different things of the flesh or the world. Repent and pray the Lord for forgiveness. If you need the prayers of the church, they're extended to you. Our invitation song encourages you to act now. Get it straight now. Why not now set your life right? We have opportunity to do so as together we stand and sing.